So you have a footprint in countries all over the world. What's happening in entrepreneurship in the U.S., in Israel, in Asia, in Europe?
So, I mean, it's a great question. Look, if you look at how ecosystems are measured, they're measured by, you know, how many startups are in the ecosystem, how much money is there, like, you know, money being invested, the type of companies that are coming out, things like that. And really, if you were to, you know, surmise the top few ecosystems, you could say number one, obviously, is Silicon Valley. There's no doubt it's the best in the world, you know, because of all the, you know, it's been around for many, many, many years.
Sure.
There's a lot of money there. The investors are way more sophisticated in the sense that, you know, they understand that you have to take less equity to get the best entrepreneurs, incent the entrepreneurs by by giving them room to grow, things like that. And not take too much equity at the beginning. And then the second one is actually Israel. Israel is really interesting because, you know, there's only 7 million people there. The government, the educators, the parents, they all encourage entrepreneurship. So being an entrepreneur is actually a badge of honor there. I've been there and I've spent time in the ecosystem and I've seen husband and wife teams quit their jobs, quit their day jobs so they could go out and be an entrepreneur.
Wow.
They're huge risk takers, huge. They really don't mind taking risks. And the other interesting thing about Israel is they're focused on global issues. They're not focused on local problems because there's only 7 million people. So in Israel, they actually take their sort of background from defense and they apply it to solving global problems. And they're very persistent, incredibly persistent. When I look at the third largest ecosystem, you could argue it's in either Berlin, like Germany, or London, and I would say that in Berlin, for example, there's a bigger emphasis on design, and so what we're doing in Berlin is we're bringing together artists and engineers and putting them together because I believe and we believe that in order to create balanced products, you have to have creative people, business people, and technical people at the table, right? And so Berlin is an interesting one for us because I think we're going to end up with some really soulful products and brands coming out of there. India is just a wild place. I went to India last year, and generally I was disappointed first because in India the companies there, the startups there were spawned out of the services business, and they were trying to replicate or solve problems in the U.S. So they wanted to create the next whatever Instagram for Uber or whatever you want to call it in the U.S. for companies or for customers they didn't understand. So they don't know how to market to them. They've never really, not all of them, but the people that I've met, never really traveled there or spend the time to do some customer validation. Instead, they go and they engineer a product and they try and sell it there. It doesn't work. And so, when you look at India, there's 1 billion people there, right? And there's so many problems that need to be solved. There's problems in education, in policy, government, agri-tech. Like you could point at any big industry and say, like, India, you can go solve this problem, right?
Yeah.
And so I went there last year and I kind of met the people in the accelerator and we agreed as a team that we needed to start telling them to start focusing on local issues. And then we did some talks. I went around, did some talking. Our lead in India, Mukund Mohan, went around, did some talks. And we talked about solving local India problems. I went there 6 months ago and things started to change. Wow. And then I was there in December, and it's like a complete about face. Like India is actually listening, and their ecosystem is evolving and accelerating at such a fast rate. I do believe it's going to be in the top, certainly the top 10 and probably the top 5 soon if it keeps accelerating at the rate it's accelerating.
That's extraordinary in that time frame.
Yeah.
Especially that, with 1 billion people there and just the diversity of the regions.
Yeah, and what's interesting about India is there's they created 1.5 million engineers there in education. Like, you don't need that many software engineers. So what's happening is, there's so many software engineering schools there. Parents are sort of thinking that you send your kids to become a software engineer and you're going to make a lot of money. But unfortunately, the software engineers are being exported to other countries because there's not enough jobs. And they're not really thinking about, like, what does it take to build balanced products. So they're not, in a country where arts and entertainment is such a big deal, like in Bollywood, why aren't they bringing in more designers into the mix, right? Yeah. And so we, Microsoft Ventures, can actually help evolve an ecosystem. So one of the things we did was we started focusing on female entrepreneurship, right? And we wanted to see what would happen if we brought more women into the mix, right? And so we had a person who runs our accelerator in Bangalore. She's a ex-entrepreneur, and we had her go out and start speaking on behalf of women entrepreneurs and start bringing more women entrepreneurs into the mix. This is about a year ago. I went there in December, and she had like 100 and I don't know, maybe 118 women inside a room that I went to go speak to. I was shocked, right?
That's awesome.
So I went to go talk to them, and I asked them, hey, how many of you are engineers? And 4 of them raised their hands. How many of you are designers? Like 18 to 20 raised their hands. So right there, you know there's an issue, right, where they're not talking to each other. So it kind of gives you an idea what the differences are.